Despite its long-term challenges, Africa is poised for an economic surge that is likely to see a number of countries reach middle-income status by 2020. That's the conclusion of a recent study by the World Bank, which has a new strategy to spur Africa's growth. In part two of my conversation with Obiageli Ezekwezili, Vice President of the World Bank's Africa Division, I asked her, how can the World Bank avoid accusations of imposing development programs on Africa without fully understanding the real conditions on the ground?
We talked to citizens, we talked to governments, we talked to the private sector, we talked to the academics across the continent, we talked to African followers of African issues. It was really a rigorous consultation process for us.
Once you synchronized all these ideas together, how can you simplify the strategy? If you were telling a layperson out there, what is it?
It's a strategy that essentially builds on the growth that we've seen on the continent in the last decade by saying that that growth needs to be deeper, it needs to be stronger, it needs to be higher. And that growth needs to be broader. So we're looking for many more opportunities for your continent to be competitive and to create jobs. So the significant pillar in our strategy is competitiveness and jobs. Then the second pillar is that this is a continent that still faces shocks, exogenous shocks. So you have the global economic crisis. It affects Africa. The energy price increases, the food crisis, or climate change, droughts, floods, or conflicts. So how do we build the kind of resilience that enables Africa deal with these vulnerabilities well? That's the second pillar. Foundation, you need very sound foundation, and that foundation has to be good governance and public sector capacity.
Yeah. The other issue that has been a big issue in Africa is unemployment or underemployment, particularly of the youth. We've seen this magnified in North Africa during this wave of revolts. How can Africa handle that?
By essentially broadening the base of the economies. You know, if you take a country like Tunisia, Tunisia has been growing because Tunisia took all the economic reform measures and foreign direct investment was coming, but it wasn't broad enough. Another thing, Tunisia invested big time in education. Now, but the products of that education coming out had no jobs. So Africa learns from that. Africa essentially learns that you need to embark on the sector-specific reforms, whether it's the agriculture sector, or it's the tourism sector, or it's the investment in the infrastructure, or it's in the development of your human skills that are relevant to the kinds of needs that the private sector would be in need of, or even the public sector would need. People have to just sort of give more thoughts to many more sources of economic participation by citizens.
What's the role of Africa Union, NEPAD, and other regional bodies in Africa in spurring economic growth, and especially when it comes to the real basis for the growth, that is infrastructural development?
Regional integration, especially economic integration, is really mandatory for Africa. African economies are so small that their survival is actually on the basis of economies of scale. They need to be part of regional markets in order to be of significance. And so at the World Bank, some 4 years or thereabout ago, we went also regional. Even though we deal country by country, we now have regional programs. And so through the regional programs, we actually have very huge partnership with Africa Union Commission, with Africa Union Commission NEPAD, with the regional economic communities, whether it's the EAC, ECOWAS, SADC, and we're helping both on the physical integration. We have, transportation links where we're investing our resources. A lot of the work in telecommunication we did through the investment in the fiber optic backbones running crisscrossing countries. Even in terms of institution and trade logistics, we support in the policy harmonization to enable countries actually have the kind of common template that makes for efficiencies in the movement of goods and services. Even if Africa does not trade with the rest of the world, this is a continent now that's on the billion mark. And so it can trade with itself.
You're a very dynamic person, very enthusiastic, but in one word, do you get frustrated by the rate of development of that continent?
I have to be totally frustrated in order to have the kind of desire I have to see the continent transform. I mean, I think that, frustration can be positive because it spurs you on. It makes you not want to take no for an answer. And I think that the credit goes to a lot of the young people on the continent today. I mean, they're not held back by the failures of the past, not at all. I mean, I see in the young Africans that I interact with by the privilege of my responsibility, I see a complete determination to transforming that continent. And that's one of the things that we said in our strategy. And by the way, Africa is a very young continent compared to the rest of the world, which have aging population. Now, these young people are the future of Africa, and not in a cliche kind of way. They really are the future for Africa.
Ezekwezili emphasizes that the successful implementation of the 10-year development strategy will require viable partnerships with the African society, governments, and the private sector.